All right, everybody, how we doing out there? Thank you for joining us. My name is Joffrey Black. This is the Los Angeles Film School Animation and Visual Effects. This was going to be a presentation with one of our grads. I am the program director for Los Angeles Film School Animation and Visual Effects and the Game Art track. Just joining us. We're also joined with the TA, John Les. John, go ahead and say hello.
How's it going, everybody?
Awesome. So today is exciting for me. I've been with this school for about 11 years in teaching. And when I first started back in 2010, I met this young man here, David Estes. And at that time, it was great to see a grad or a student. He was graduating at that time and come in to do something fantastic. And we're glad to have him back. And this is going to be part two. If you saw the original, part one, it would have been on Veterans Day 2021. But we're having him back to talk about the project that he's been working with. David Estes, hello, how are you doing?
Hello, thanks for having me back. Doing really well. Start, haven't had a lot of opportunity for tragedy, but
Yes. Hey, I'm glad you're staying safe. Hopefully everything else that you're surviving the holidays and getting back to the start of the year. Just as everybody else has been in a lot of the world. But
Mhm.
here we are. We're making things work. We're making things happen. But for those who did not see the first part of this video, we're going to talk a little bit about your journey. But before we do that, I just want to let people know that uh, for those who are joining us, thank you for taking time out today to get some information on what we're going to talk about. Um, Pretty much how one person put together their own game. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And you can see it in the link. Go ahead and you can communicate that in the chat here to where they can put that. And we're going to get to your question. We're also going to have a Q&A where we're going to discuss a lot more about your questions. I know there's going to be a lot of questions. I know I had a lot of questions when talking to Dave. And just to get caught up and to say, how were you able to come about creating a game animation studio manager? So before we do that, let's go ahead and get people caught up. You started with the LA Film School. What year? What year was
It
it?
was 2009 when I started, and then graduated at the end December of 2010. So just
Okay.
coming up on a dozen years since I started. So a lot has happened. A lot has time flown though. In some ways, it
Yeah.
feels very quick, but in the other time, looking back at those 12 years, it's been quite a journey.
So what made you go to a school for, at that time would have been animation or visual effects or video games? What got you started? Like what was the thing for you?
I've always loved being creative. One of the things I kind of started with animation, visual effects at a young age,
Hmm.
kind of because when I was growing up in the Midwest, not a lot of people were into doing video, and animation was something I could do it on my own. Get someone in to record a voice whenever they were free, and then I could kind of do the rest of it at my convenience. So that was kind of a major reason I started in animation. Coming out to LA, I knew very little. I had just gotten out of the army, and so one thing I was looking for, I really liked the program the way it was set up at the time, going just the 14 months straight at the time. I know the program's developed over time, but one thing with the GI Bill that worked great for me, having no gaps, I was ready just to dive in. So it fit a lot of things I was looking for. The staff from the moment I met everyone there, they were just, you could tell there's an energy of they wanted to harness, talent and artistic people and bring them into their fold. So, and it was kind of everything lined up, when I needed it to.
Um, and I'm glad it did. I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad, I'm a veteran too, the Army, and I talk about this a lot with our students. You can't predict what's going to happen in your graduation year, for those who
Yeah.
graduated in 2020, 2021. So I'm glad things lined up for you. You graduate 2010. What does the landscape look like? Do you go back to your hometown or do you stay in Los Angeles? What are your next plans? What do you think is going to happen, and what actually happens?
So joining the army was really a way to get out here. That was always part of the plan. So coming out here, it was like this is, I've made it here. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I deployed really to get out here. Um, so there were a few years where it was rough. I actually ended up going part time to another school just kind of use the GI Bill to help cover rent. I was taking really low budget X, but I, this is what I wanted to do, and it was I was gonna make that work, or I got there were times where there wasn't a lot of food, or I was living in a mouse infested apartment, but it was for me it was this is what I came out here to do, and that's a few years of that. Again, looking back at 12 years, it's been amazing. I've been working at Cartoon Network now for the last 7 years, and so looking back at those first 2-3 years of struggle, that seems like nothing
Yeah.
in hindsight, but at the moment it was definitely rough. And we're coming out of a recession really with the economy, so
Mhm.
a lot of really talented people had been unemployed. So when they're like, oh, do we want this 12-year veteran or do we want this new kid?
Yeah.
So there were a lot of struggles, and I think just me growing up trying to just do whatever I could in the Midwest where the industry didn't exist, and then being in the military where you literally it's survival. I think those helped make coming to LA was a lot easier. There weren't as many. I guess the hard times were easier to manage and navigate, I think, with all that. And I've been very fortunate that after grinding for a few years, met some contacts who were then able to put me at a better studio and a better, kept rising up until I've been able to work at much nicer, union studios.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah, so there's something that I want to convey to our audience because I truly feel like students and people want to get in the industry or people that's been in the industry. I think there's something about your background in military. I think it's something about being outside of Los Angeles and going. I made these decisions, um, and I'm going to stick with it. Um, what would you say to those who are getting ready to graduate? And in the pandemic time or in the future, and about trying to achieve their goals, I mean, what is it that you take from your experience, and how do you relate that to, like, hey, how do you keep going? Like, I think that's really an important thing. So many people hit the anxieties. I'm going to, if you're a veteran and you're on GI Bill, I'm going to run out of money,
right.
and I have a specific lifestyle that was reflective of that money. Or if I have to leave, if I have to move, if I have, roommates, like, how do I quiet the anxiety, keep going? What would you say to our students who are about to graduate?
If I knew how to quiet the anxiety, I think things would be a lot better. But no, yeah, I think it's right now what this is obviously with the pandemic and everything becoming remote, things have become radically different. But even when I first started, back in the late '90s, doing my own video work, YouTube, the internet, social media didn't
Yeah.
exist. And it was a completely different world. And I think even just going from there to when I was in the military and social media started existing to now, where like even not only just how you network, but how studios are putting media out there, where streaming and they're looking at 2 or 3 minute content, like this could be golden because we get so I think one thing that this is this what's happening right now is going to be right now. It's not going to be how things look in 5 years. It's not going to be how things look in 10 years. And that would be true with or without the pandemic. So I think, just know that things, they're constantly in flux, and if you can just keep pushing through, the hardest thing is breaking into it, because once you're in the industry and you've got those contacts, it's not just waving around being like, hey, look at me. You have a lot more. You have contacts where you can say, hey, if anyone knows of a job.
Yes.
um, so I would say it's regardless of when you're starting, there's going to be struggles, um, and there's certainly this is a big crazy one right now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I would say struggles are going to come and go constantly.
I think that's so important. When you were graduating, I a year prior to that I got laid off. So and you're right, it was a huge recession, and it was how do you bounce back from it? What I've learned since that time, 11 years, is uh you're right, the industry changes for the better, even when it feels like it's changing for the worst. That's something to look forward to. When you start to build, most important thing, the networking, but you start to build these other skill sets. Your journey could be, I was an artist, like a character modeler for this many years, and then I became a lighter, or I became a production manager. Like, those things are all valuable. If that's what you want to do, you want to stay into it. And that's what I really love about watching the journey of not only myself, but other students and grads that they're going through, and they're finding something new about this. Like, we're continuing to find something new about this. That's amazing about it. So let's fast forward and get you to Cartoon Network and talk about that journey. Like, you're at a studio, you're working, and how are you progressing? And we're going to relate this back to your game, animation studio manager. How did you start to go, I want to make this thing? So let's start with the Cartoon Network and move into your game.
Absolutely. And kind of tying in what you had just said about, working in different fields and switching around. When I started, I was in live action, CG, kind of the creature feature type area, removing dolly track, and I did not, the industry is so big, and as it changes, new fields are constantly opening up. And I think that's important, is to look and say there are so many avenues that you can pursue. So I started from there, ended up, transitioning into working on some kid shows, mostly because they were doing a spin-off of a CG show, so they needed me to treat the CG a live action, like, visual effect element, because they didn't have the asset. And then they're like, "Oh, that was awesome. Can you just help us?" And then stayed with them for, over a year, and then someone connected to Cartoon Network. And getting there, it was I had 3 years of just gig to gig, expecting short term. When I got to Cartoon Network, it was again expected to be a couple months, and it was it was there when it was, even when it was only supposed to be a few months. You get in there and you're like, oh, this is a studio.
Yes.
This is some of the places I had worked were a couple people trying to throw together things.
Right.
And then there were a couple small studios which were still great, but you can definitely tell from where you started to where you get to Cartoon Network and you're like, oh, this is how it's supposed to work.
Right. Right.
And and yeah, it ended up, our project kind of got extended, and then we got moved on to other things, and through there's been a couple hiatuses, but essentially since spring of 2014, I've been there. So it's been a nice long journey where I've been able to work there. And what I found is it is a pipeline. It is, when you're making a project, it can take 8 to 12 months to make, an 11-minute episode. It
Right.
is There are so many people, and I think that's one thing I really started to appreciate when I got to Cartoon Network. Is it's not just, hey, I want to make a movie,
Yeah.
and you do it. There are so many stages, and I think that's kind of what started opening up this kind of the specific of this game. I've always loved inventory management. I love Excel spreadsheets. That's how my brain works. Um, and no one, you see all sorts of jokes like, when you go home for Christmas, everyone's an animator again,
Yeah.
because no one knows what the industry is. So it's
Right.
kind of a combination of all of that coming together. When we were in the pandemic, I thought, this is the time I can try to put this idea together, that I had for this game, which was, I kind of wanted to be a satirical look at a little bit of the nepotism in the industry. Of, you have a mom that's a big shot producer who has no confidence in you, yet
Hmm.
you're starting a studio and having access to everything, getting worlds ahead, even though she doesn't believe in you. And then it also plays with the, you sell your soul to get ahead. As you know, the employees go from these nice, happy, people to being put in their little boxes and cubes and offices, and it becomes less and less about being creative and more about, oh, we have to appease the fans and critics and make money. And I wanted to kind of humorously play off of that idea um, in this game. So it was kind of all of that finding its way into this.
And so I'm gonna touch on a few things you said because they're really important. A lot of young people and a lot of people who want to start into this industry, they're looking at, I want to create my own film, I want to create my own animation, and I want to create my own video game. And having worked on video games myself, if you're given a intellectual property that belongs to somebody else, that is 18 months. If it's aligned with the movie, it's 18 months, and longer. If you're doing something like Halo, if you're doing something, that has a huge fan base, they can take forever, and
Mhm.
it's not something out the door. And the biggest thing is it's a huge team to make these things. So, but it's a great dream. It's a great journey. Not everybody gets a chance to make their own video game. You've had this idea even before you started the industry. You said it comes from your interest in like spreadsheets, the pipeline, the production value of it. And then, okay, so you're working there and you start to, what is the very first time you start to put something together? When did that happen? What year was that? Like, when did you start saying, I'm going to start fleshing this thing out?
Honestly, it was kind of an idea that was kind of in the back of my head for a while.
Hmm.
I would talk to friends and kind of I had the idea of the pipeline, especially even before like I my first film school was, I'd get the Pixar movies and watch the behind the
Yeah.
scenes, and I would sit there and watch hours of behind the scenes features,
Yes.
and that was, the A Bug's Life, Monsters Inc., some of those late 90s, early
Hmm.
2000. So I started kind of getting this idea even back then, and then the more I got into it, the more I saw that. I think one thing that really appealed to me is I've always kind of been that one man studio in a lot of ways. Like I've had people that help out from time to time, but it's when I was growing up, it was I had to do that. I had to make this. I've been working on this game for over a year, and yeah, there are times where you feel like, okay, I'm just gonna throw this away and be done with keeping that motivation. I
Do you
would say
think,
that's kind of been a huge so that was always it. And then as I started working at Cartoon Network, I started painting a more okay, we start with the stories, a storyboard, design.
okay, yes. That's what I was going to say. Do you think there's a sense of maturity? And it's not saying that you don't take it seriously, but it's more of a professional. Like, I understand what pipeline is now. I understand the value of these positions. Do you think there's a sense of maturity, that experience that continue to go, I can do this now. I can progress out of, you know, um, thinking it's just an idea to it becoming uh more concrete, like it's an actual game that I can play.
Certainly. The idea it's a cool idea, but anyone can come up with an idea, but then how do you take that and pull it through the execution? And that's a huge thing, and I think that's been a real going through the process, especially working at the smaller studios where you kind of have your hand in everything,
Hmm.
and then you get to the bigger studios and you see the pipeline. I think that has definitely allowed me to be able to depict this in a way that feels, I think, accurate to people in the industry, but also accessible to people that aren't.
Yes.
find that bridge. If I don't want people in the industry like that's not how it goes. I
Right.
mean, yes, things are simplified, but it should still feel familiar. Um, so yeah, it's definitely something I think having over a decade of experience, it has definitely informed how the game plays.
So as we're gonna because we're actually gonna see this, we're gonna actually have this, game running. There's somebody gonna be playing it here. And where can we find this game? Because it looks like it's early access, and you're starting to get uh, some eyes on it, and getting an audience playing out there. Where can we find this?
Absolutely, and this will be a great thing to talk about as it starts playing.
Hmm.
It's been in early access for a few months. It's on Steam, on PC early access, and one thing that I'll say definitely was a mistake, something I learned from a learning experience. We'll say was when I first put it out on early access, I had thought, okay, I'm gonna put the first 8 levels out in kind of a skeleton form. That way, people can see the trajectory of the game and give feedback. And instead, people got on, saw level 1, and said, "Oh, this looks interesting, but it's very bare bones. I'll come back later," and they kind of disappeared. So I've been the last couple months really revamping all of that, and I believe those first 8 levels are now much. There's a lot more. There's a tutorial, which I think as we start playing here, you'll see. There's a tutorial which really pushes that story and a few other things like your mom is giving you this building and helping you get started. So it kind of feeds into that storyline, but it also helps you know what you're doing. The storyline was, or the tutorial was lacking when it first came out, and I would watch people playing it where they're just flailing around, not knowing what to do, which is doesn't make a good initial stream. But now I think it's much better, and if it is on Steam early access and should be complete within, I'm hoping for March April timeframe.
Oh, perfect. So again, this is on Steam. It is Animation Studio Manager, and we're gonna go ahead and start watching some gameplay. And as we're doing that, then I know the first question that I'm always thinking about, like, uh, here's something, and I go back to something that you said, in when you're looking at this stuff. We didn't have YouTube and everything. We had like Animation World Magazine, 3D World Magazine, and you see that one individual like, I made my own animation, 90 minutes short. And I'm going, man, that's not replica. You can't repeat that. That's a big chunk of your life. And they're like, I just sacrificed. Who worked on this with you? Like, did you have other people working on this with you?
So overall, it is me. I have two buddies that are that I collaborate with over the years. We've done some web shorts and a few other things. And so I have one buddy, Tom, who he composes music, and he did the music that you're listening to. So that's
Okay.
him. Um, he. But as things are, since this is just a little personal project, no money involved. He originally was going to do all the sound effects as well, but he's getting his PhD. Trying to
Yep.
be all successful and stuff. Ugh. But due to that, he had to I had to pick up the rest of the sound effects, but he did a little bit of that and then the music. And then I had a buddy, kind of the same thing. He was gonna do all the graphics, but then ended up getting busy, so he designed all the production and corporate characters. And then I took over from there, and then actually did all the graphics, all the animation, and everything
And
from there.
so feel free to talk about what's happening right here. The things I'm going to add is, what are you building this on? How are you creating this? What engine?
Certainly. Real quick, you see up there the animators. That's a couple little Easter egg references. The editor is me, and the animator Adam is a little Easter egg reference to my buddy Adam. And then the composer, which unlocks in the next level, is a little reference to the composer.
Okay. And so this is, what space are they in? Where are they at here?
Oh,
There we go.
I was still okay. Disappeared for a second. But but yeah. So what the game is created in the Unity engine.
Okay.
And then all the graphics are created in After Effects.
Okay. And so are they in a classroom here?
They are. This would be your studio, your office area here. They've got their little desks. And what's happening here in the first level, your mom there, which you set up, you kind of customize your mom character at the beginning, and she
Hmm.
starts out again as the has no confidence in you, so she feels like she has to kind of hold your hand, and then as you go through the levels, she kind of lets you loose, connects you with her executive and producer friends. But then as you actually start to succeed and start to win awards, she then kind of gets a little jealous and starts to turn into your rival and nemesis. So what you have right here is you have your mom guiding you through. Here's how you hire people, and then you're gonna make media and everything.
So is any of this reflective of like, was your mother actually helping you? Was your parents helping you in that way?
So I'll say the mother is not a nice character, and that does not reflect my mom. She's very supportive. In fact, my mother would be more represented by in corporate. There's a marketer. She actually worked as a marketing manager. No, my mother is sweet and very supportive.
Okay.
Um, but as a marketing person back in Iowa, worked with colleges and the local TV. And when I was young, I was on our local Midwestern news a couple times. I feel if she had the opportunity to, she definitely would have assisted. But this is more of I know people who are very successful, and they have kids who the kid, they might have talent, but it's the opportunities are just thrown at them
Yeah.
because of who the parent is. And then you have other people who um like more like myself, is a transplant. I come to LA with no contacts, no experience, and you're breaking the ground,
Yes.
from ground zero. And so I kind of wanted to play off of that, but also the fact that even though she's giving you all this, she doesn't believe in you at all, because that's kind of how the industry, it's that aspect is more of how the people look at the industry. You got to sell your soul to get ahead.
Right. Right.
So it's more of a play off of the people's perspective of the industry than.
And it's good because it's. I mean, um, when I talk to students or perspectives or students that are going in the first part of the program, they do talk about some of the adversity or some of the negative things that they're hearing about their journey. And it's tough when it comes from your own family, and a lot of times it does come from that. And it's something that people have not, or not all people, but they don't say, "Hey, I'm going to turn against my mom and dad or my own family." Everybody gets to that point, but we are also guided. I'm going to listen to my mom and my dad if I'm a teenager getting ready to start the world, and based off of what they've done, because I feel like that's more the textbook. So it's great to see that here, and I think it's a great sort of hook, um, unless it's like a Grimm's fairy tale. The mother's not the antagonist,
Right.
so it's great to go, okay, here's something that's relatable, that a lot of people can understand, or they understand from someone else's, like you knew friends that may have gone through something like this. What are we seeing here?
So she's kind of finishing up what we just kind of went through. There is every time you level up, again, since your mom's a big shot, there's articles being written about you, and then you were given a choice. Do you take the pure path, or do you take the corrupt path? And that's something, as you level up. The corrupt path will give you perks and benefits, but you start to get corruption, which there's pros and cons of that. If you're more corrupt, you might get hacked or viruses more often, or it's harder to hire people. You have to pay more to hire people because it's harder to convince them to come work for you if you're really corrupt. On the other hand, all those perks make things easier for you. So I wanted to introduce a little bit of that element, and then she's now just kind of finishing up her. Okay, so there's a coffee room, and then she's about to tell you that she's yeah, there you go. She is too busy to keep helping you out. So after this, she's going to take off and kind of leave you at it. And so the first few levels here, as right there, see, I'm busy. Um,
Right, right.
But yeah, so the first few levels are you just kind of building up your studio, and then as you continue on from there, you'll continue to grow and eventually start making films and awards. So this each level unlocks a few more. Now you have the composer and artist. Tom, like I said before, the guy that composed the music.
That's
So
awesome.
are you the designer of these characters? I mean, I think the design of the character shapes, I mean, they're really awesome.
Thank you. That's Adam did the character, like the design of them, and
Hmm.
then kind of sat them at their desk and kind of arranged that, and then I animated them. So that is Adam. He I like that style. He's got a couple of little web shows. That's kind of his style, which is fun. It's great even with just I have a few friends and they see that and they're like, oh, I can tell that's his style, which is
Right.
that's a nice kind of getting that little teamwork there. No, with the two people that I worked with, I told them what I was going for, with the characters. Aside from the three of us that were represented, and there's a few other symbolic characters throughout as well. But other than that, I was like, let's get make sure we have a very diverse cast of, there's actually a lot in the characters that I kind of wanted, like you mentioned earlier, even if you're not in the industry, you can see yourself in. uh, so the first time that happens, there'll be a pop-up explaining what just happened. If you don't pull the risky business lever, it'll just pull itself and something random happens, like the water in your face. But no, even though this is a film industry, I wanted to kind of let everyone be able to see themselves in it. So, there are characters, some are right-handed, some are left-handed, some have glasses. There's a character that has a hearing aid, a character that has a cane at her desk. There's some younger, older, and a lot. I tried to I wanted to, in many ways, not reflect the real industry, but
Yes.
in some ways just say this is people. You can see yourself somewhere in this cast of 17 departments.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think that's important, when we look at like fantasy, the cost of living in New York is absolutely, ridiculous. But when you look at a show like Friends, you got someone who works at a coffee shop and they live in this beautiful, one bedroom apartment. And so, and I think that's important, I want to focus on how this happens a lot when I would see students uh, and, just individuals try to create their own projects. And sometimes they'll ask me, how can I get more people? Do I got to get funding for this? Do I promise something on the back end? Um, what is the value that you were able to say, I'm going to get people to work on this project? And when they left, how did you overcome, like, man, I don't know if I should continue on with this because if they didn't believe in it, like no one else is going to believe in it. Why should I work on this? How would, yeah, I know that happens to a lot of people who are thinking about starting their own projects.
Certainly. Well, I would say that's maybe another aspect of having done this for a long time. Both in personal projects. Growing up, that was absolutely the case. People would find out back when I lived in the Midwest, like, oh, let's do a video project, and three minutes into it, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
that no one has the patience to do that. The guys I'm working with, it was they definitely they're still they one of them's been testing it a lot, even though he didn't have a chance. So you try to remember, hey, everyone's got their own lives. It's not a
Yeah.
personal reflection of me. You mentioned crowdfunding versus doing it on your own. I've experimented with that, but that can also, you run into this, oh, what happens if we don't get the funding or not enough or half of it?
Yeah.
What if life happens, a pandemic happens and things
Yeah.
shift? How do you, now that you have people, you know, counting on you to do something with their money?
Yes.
There's so there were a lot of factors. I'm also, though, I'm just the type, if I want to do something, I will research it, and then I'll do it. I knew it was the same thing when I joined the army. I once I realized that was a path I wanted to do, I went to the recruiter's office on Friday, went to the center on Monday, and then got shipped off to basic the following Monday. Like
Wow,
9 days, I'm in. Like, but for me, it was just like there was no question. It was like I've already done the research. I know, so I feel the same way with this game. I knew I wanted to do it, even though I had never done anything like it, and I knew there'd be a ton of learning. I
wow.
just said, let's do it. Let's dive into this and get going. And we got a little mini game going. So something you mentioned, like the whole friends in New York thing. So I there's a blend of, on the one hand, I want this to feel real to people that are in the industry. You have the right, progression of people, and the numbers seem to make sense, but it's also a game, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So like these little mini games or things drop down, and you get perks and benefits. I thought by adding some of those things and adding the playfulness, hopefully people that just think, oh, movies are cool, and it's plays with that industry and it has the storyline, but it's not about actually trying to nail down an actor for this contract. And in real life, you wouldn't have one studio doing this. You have different crew. It's a lot more complicated and messy. So again, these
Yeah, yeah.
matching games. So.
Yeah, and that is the magic. And I think uh it's you don't want to lose that interest. I like that little mini game that just popped up, which prompted had are you considering that this is something that could be played on mobile or tablet device?
That's an interesting. It's I personally, I don't like, I think this could do really well as you can do 10 stories an hour, and for $1 you can, I I'm not a fan of that model. But there is definitely some merit there, and I could see there being there, or maybe even an extension of, you've got your characters, but maybe if you do play the mini games on your mobile app, it can give you boosts and perks. It's there's a few things I would love to do. It's kind of since I'm doing everything,
Hmm.
even some of the things I wanted to do, I kind of was like, oh, now I have to do all the graphics, add the sound effects, so that slowed me down. And I'm trying to balance. On the one hand, if this gets a huge reaction, I'd love to do that and add more to it and keep that engagement. If it gets a little bit and I learn a lot, then maybe I finish this game and take that and say, the next game maybe will have start with the mobile. So I'm kind of playing that based on how things go. I really want to first complete the project. I
Yes.
think it's important uh, to so many indie projects, especially, or recent graduates. You have these ideas. You start the idea, but then something comes up, or you get a new idea, and all of a sudden you have 20 half burning ideas on the stove. So I think I don't want to rush and put out something that's not good, but I know I could tweak this for the next 5 years. So I think I'm trying to find that balance. But
Yeah.
certainly, if there's interest, I would love to continue.
The I know this question will come up. It's when it comes to building games like this and the way that you've set it up, there's a lot of things that are happening behind the screen here, and that would involve programming.
Hmm.
How, if anything, talk about the programming that can scare a lot of people, especially if you're not in, you know, a school that offers, like, we don't offer in-depth programming, computer science kind of thing. But talk about, finding a solution for that, because this looks pretty planned out. And why your decision to go with Unity over the Unreal Engine or anything else, the Lumberyard or Gamebryo? Why did you go with this in your choices to start working with the programming?
Certainly. Well, I'll start with the Unity. That one was pretty easy. As I was, researching, starting into this, one of the big things I liked was, Unity offered if you're making under than $100,000 as a game
Mm,
programmer, you can download it for free.
okay.
Which, I know as students, it's often hard to pay those $1,000 price tags, or
Yes.
$50 a month things, and I certainly didn't want to do it pay that just for an idea that I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. So that really contributed to this. I wanted definitely to get a legit software since I'm putting this on Steam. I wanted to make sure everything was above board. So that really contributed a big portion to the decision. As far as programming, that a little the coming from Iowa, animation was not an industry that could be accepted. My mom has always been supportive, but my ex stepdad didn't see that as a career. That was kind of the typical story of no, you're not. That's cute that you have a little hobby that you think is fun,
Yeah.
but there's no way that's a job. To the point where it was, I mean, that was very that was hard to overcome because that was dealing with that constant. You're not gonna make it. I think going from that and then the military has made LA so much better. You get to the military, they're like, "You're worthless." I know. No,
Yeah.
but no, it's. I think one thing though that he pushed was engineering. So I graduated high school and was ready for college when I was 16, and since I was a minor, he put me to. Engineering, so I did a lot of computer science. So I had a couple years of programming, which I've been able to use to do, websites or
Right.
little After Effects you can program. So I kind of had that base knowledge, and honestly, this was a great thing. When I started experimenting back in the 90s, I was watching DVDs or reading 1,000-page manuals. Now, when I try doing this, I could go find a YouTube video and find someone explaining how to do it.
Right.
And so it was a lot easier to break into it. There is a lot of code in this. Like, everything is. Uh, I started before all the graphics and all the complicated stuff. I first started just with a couple buttons: hire, fire, and then there was a text thing that said how many people there are and how many of each inventory they've made, and that was my first iteration of the game, just to kind of get that mechanics working. The time, there was a bit of just the pacing of the game. There's something kind of subtle that happens in level one. The pacing is faster.
Hmm.
And then as it continues on, the pacing slows down because there's a lot more going on. Um, so I would say even below all the graphics and menus and animations and stuff like that, yeah, there's a whole level of the feedback, the play loop. If it's going too fast, you can't see what's going on. Too slow, it gets boring. Trying to unlock how much unlocks at each level. There's been a lot of that, which has been a system of balancing, and that's a lot of code. I don't know. I don't know if there's thousands and thousands of lines. I should probably see if there's a way to count all those
Yeah.
scripts.
So would you brought up something that I thought was great for the narrative, the ex stepdad, as another character or another antagonist in there for a sequel or something like that. But if you think about it, like I knew when I was starting out and you know uh having big pipe dreams of thinking I'm going to do something in a very short amount of time. But I was
Mhm.
in reality, I was doing it to impress my friends and my family. Like, hey, you didn't think I could make it, but I made it. And the thing was like, this is a lot of work, like to code. But a lot of that's visual coding. Node-based scripting has added a lot to doing this, or even this is it becomes a gateway to getting into scripting, basic scripting, so you can at least understand it. How would you recommend somebody start, like, and you mentioned this before, like don't try to eat 8 levels of a story, just like you're not going to go with a 90 or 30 minute
Right.
animation piece when you're going to output like seconds per week. Like, what would you recommend that people do? Like, I want to start my game. I fear coding, or I fear the art. How much should I be starting? Like, where should I start from? And this could also go for people who go, I love to write. I have a journal, or I've had these stories in my head. I shoot a bunch of small little, videos with my brothers and sisters. Like, how much should they start off with to feel a sense of like this can move forward?
Well, that's a great question because I can do a lot of this stuff, but like you said, those characters, they look cute. That wasn't not something I could do. And the music,
Hmm.
catchy. Like when you're hearing the mini game, you hear that da da dum dun,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
fun jazzy theme, and then you go out. What's great is I'm able to go to my composer and tell him what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Tell him like, all right, and when we go to the corporate office, make it sound a little more stuffy, and when we're over, and that's great to know. Sometimes you need to rely on other people to do
Yeah.
that, and I would say, obviously, if you're trying to sell something, you can't use music that someone else has done. But if you can do everything but the music, do that and show some people,
Yeah.
film what you can and put some soundtracks on it to show what it could be. And maybe that would get someone's interest who could say, hey, let me do that. I think people are a lot more willing uh to help on a project once you've proven it. That's always the how do you get the experience when everyone wants you to have experience.
Right.
um and the best thing would to do to find out what you can do and do it. Make a really good version of that, and then do something bigger. One of the decisions with this game, I know CG, but adding adding CG elements and like that's a whole nother layer of things. And so it was kind of a decision, especially since originally I wasn't going to do the artwork, that it was
Right.
just kind of a decision. I only want to tackle 75 things at once, not 1,000. So I need to pick which items, and I think that's really imperative. If you want to write a 600-page novel, that's a huge task. But writing a 10-page story, well, you can accomplish that.
Right, right. And you did say it, and I think I look at it as both a blessing for where we're at today, but also can be a bit of a curse is not having YouTube when I was growing up and I had the magazines and I had the books. A library, going to the library was still something. um, Going to the best student in the class that you knew was still something. Idolizing people on these forums, that was still something, and that gave you this boost of inspiration.
Hmm.
Now in this era, we can get access and download a lot of stuff very quickly, and it can be very confusing, like how much you really want me to go through 9 hours of watching this video and so forth. I think having that initial plan thing, how can I accomplish, just like you said, maybe something on paper, maybe just a small little thing, and move forward to that. We're going to be getting to a Q&A about everything. I want to take this to sort of the end of where you're at now and going, what's next for this game? How many people have you shown it to? Like, where do you want to take this to?
Absolutely. And it kind of to finish up with something you also touched on there at the end there. It's these this project. It's you're looking at it, and it it can be daunting. It can be, I think having a task, looking at what you want to accomplish and setting a plan and a goal. I think that's essential. There's so much content out there on social media, on YouTube. When I first made my very first short film back in 2004, YouTube didn't exist. And so, when we did this, it was screened at like our local church, and it was an event. I think there was actually a thing in the paper, our local paper, about we made this thing, and that was a big deal. And now people making thing that people make videos every day. They post it on YouTube. I feel like it's almost shifted where if I make something, people kind of feel like, yeah, of course you did. You're the guy that makes stuff, but this
Yeah.
person who doesn't, they did and it's like, no, but so I think that's definitely, there's been a shift in how everything works. And that's been something that's been fascinating to try to navigate. Something I'm still exploring, which goes to your question there. So with this game, there are, I believe, 50, a little over 50 players so far that have played it on Steam, and then I
Okay.
had another 6 or 7 that had tried it, and even before it was on Steam. They had played it in its early form and kind of got a little burnt out, but I'm bringing them back in because, like I mentioned earlier, it's really getting toward its last phases. I'm currently testing an update right now, which kind of heavily rebalances everything and gets that
Hmm.
level 9. Which so stepping back, like the first few levels, as we see here, he's kind of jumped. Let's see where are we at here. I think we're on the level 7. So in the first few levels, yeah, level 7. In the first few levels, your mom guides you, and then you have your executive and producer that bring you forward. And once you get up to level 7, you've got your full crew, your full corporate crew. You've got a barista brewing coffee for you to make everyone all happy and working fast, and you're ready to win awards. And I think that's the point where your mom starts to kind of have that rivalry. And so what I'm doing right now is up doing level 9, which when you actually start to face off with her. Uh,
Oh, okay.
Level 7 and 8, you start doing little awards, and she's like, "Oh, that's cute that they found awards
Yes.
for your."
Yeah.
Uh, and then level 9, you'll actually be facing off with her, and that's what I'm doing right now. And that really becomes the end goal. Is after you kind of start to finish that level 9, the final challenge will be her being okay. This town's not big enough for the two of us, so let's have a face off. And if you can beat me, I'll retire. Um, and then that'll be the end of it. So that's kind of the trajectory of the end game, which I'm working on now, and I'm um, hoping to have. I'm looking at a March, April time frame to have that done. So
Wow.
I'm hoping with this new update with level 9 to get as many people testing it as I can. I'm going to try to get some streamers back. The people that I mentioned earlier that played it when it was skeleton and bare bones, I'm like, hey, I made it better. So my goal is to get as many people on it. If anyone watching it, if you're playing it and have any notes, comments, feedback, I would love that, because this is the phase where I'm really going to be trying to make sure everything's balanced, ready to go, and then I'm going to do a push. Um, when it's released, I know my composer and I were actually talking about putting it in for some awards for the music, for some competitions and stuff. Uh, this is all stuff that I'm very I'm like this is on my next to do list. Is like after I finish it, start exploring this. I think that's gonna. I think we were talking about this earlier before the video, but making the game or movie or anything is only a part of the journey. It's then you have to release it, um, and even once it's out, no one knows about it. So it's releasing it and putting out gifs and promo and videos, and that's a whole other aspect that's definitely going to be rolling out over the next few months. Oh, I think our host might have frozen. Well, while we're waiting, we're just got the game going then. Well, I guess while we wait for Joffrey to come back, we have as we have the game here at and the corporate mode. This is most of the game. Earlier we were seeing the production level, which is where all your writers, animators, all that stuff gets made. But this is the corporate side where you're working with HR, IT, and marketing, distribution, the stuff that gets your media out to the big leagues and starts winning awards. So this is the second half
That's awesome.
of things.
Now, David, how's it going? This is John here.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Now, I do actually have some a question from chat, and I know that you addressed this earlier, but I was wondering if you can go a little bit deeper into it. They had a
Absolutely.
comment that said that they really like the design, has a really awesome retro feel to it, and they were just wondering like what made you decide on the look and the feel of the game. And I was actually also wondering if any of that was guided by the fact that a lot of this was done in After Effects. Like, how do you think that software in particular guided the aesthetic of this game?
Certainly. Well, thank you. I'm glad you like that. I appreciate it. It so there's a balance of you have all the stuff popping up in the windows, the clipboards and stuff. So I wanted to set up a layout where you could still see the characters and still have all those pop-ups. So there's a little bit of that, kind of with the GUI, and otherwise it was just kind of I like that cartoony aesthetic. It's animation, so I thought it would be, rather than going more of a photorealistic style, just to kind of go still cartoony, shadows and everything, but give it a little more playful style, especially as you're dealing with things like going bankrupt and selling your soul. Just have these
Yeah,
playful little characters with inventory bouncing above their head.
definitely helps line things up. Well,
There we go. There we go. Can you guys hear me?
yes,
Welcome
you can. Welcome
back.
back, Joffrey.
Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. If it was on my end, and definitely that's why we got John here.
Perfect. We were just
uh,
starting our Q&A, so it's perfect timing. We just finished that
yes,
answer. So
Yeah.
awesome. Let's continue on. I think the as we start to get into the Q and A, I had one really important thing that I wanted to focus on, but let's continue the Q and A. If we, John, do you have questions up coming up there?
We just had one question,
Oh, just that one. Well,
and we
to
just
follow
answered.
up
Yeah.
something else on that question, with After Effects kind of
Hmm.
influencing how things look.
Yeah.
After Effects, especially as time goes on, it's becoming even more and more robust. There's even more tools that I wasn't utilizing, that you can use for animation and characters. But yeah, it definitely, I thought, one of the big things, time management is. I want to I want these things to be unique and fun, but also there's 17 characters, so there's a little bit of that. Like, if they're drawings, I can try to maybe reuse the overall body shape in a desk. Um, Whereas I feel like the more photorealistic you get, the more obvious cheats become. So there was a little bit of both that playful energy, but then also trying to make sure it looked good within the limitations.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, the aesthetic. The point that I wanted to make before I got thrown out is, and it's not even a point, but the idea to bring up is Brian De Palma. He created some amazing. He's like in my top three directors. He did Carrie, he did Scarface, he did Goodfellas, he did a lot of great movies. And then I'm watching this documentary. He talked about sometimes you make something that's the audience is not ready for. And he had mentioned that with Scarface, and he was right. Like he goes, it was okay, it was great, or let's just say it was good at the time, but it wasn't what it is today, where it's
Right.
an absolute icon of hip hop culture and so forth, and it ushered in the sort of gangster kind of film as well as like Goodfellas. And I didn't realize how many films he had made, but what it brought to me is something that stopped me as a student. I'm making this. I checked ArtStation. Everybody's done it. I quit. And not thinking like, well, it's not about like what I love what you're doing is that you're completing a project,
Yep.
and it's not about trying to get the trend of the day, because it's these kind of moments that people go, this is what happened. Like, I still have people who would talk to me about a game I made 20 something years ago, and it's like that's really cool. That's
Yeah.
really, I didn't know. I wasn't going into the industry and going, I want to influence people and inspire them in that way. How do you feel with creating something like this where you're going, it's about the journey of someone going through this could be a career, any career,
Hmm.
coming out of college or going out and starting your career and being faced with the first line of adversity, which could be parents or that kind of guardianship, that authority, or that person that's really close to you. How do you feel like this might be something that people are going to respond to years later? And how do you go forward when you think this is not the Final Fantasy, this is not the Call of
Right.
Duty, this is not the genre that is going to trend pretty high? How do you do that?
So, to the first, I definitely think, and we've mentioned a couple times, that even though this is animation industry. I believe the
Yeah.
themes are kind of universal. Like this right here, you've got your producer putting up a meeting. Um, and it has absolutely no value. He just wants to do a meeting, and you have to deal with it. And he starts asking you questions, and it doesn't help anything. And your producer, he feels like he accomplished something. But no, I think there's a lot of themes in there, like you said, whether it's adversity, trying to make your fans, or one of the things in the game is you've got your fans and your critics, and the stuff that the fans like are not the things the critics like, and
Hmm.
vice versa. So you that's definitely applicable to every job, every industry. And I think that's um what I want to create is something that people can connect to. That you give them a villain. This mom person doesn't believe in you, so like I have people in the chat or people that friends I've talked to and be like, oh, I'll show you, or you're terror. They immediately have that feeling, and I think that to me is a huge thing. It's these stories are timeless. This journey, this struggle, it's something I think it will relate to people. I don't think it's going to sell millions of copies, no, but I do think people that enjoy it can put it away and come back in a while and still find that same enjoyment. Um, and I guess maybe it helps take a little risk, make a few mistakes on the
Yeah.
project that's not huge. So
And you never know what this leads to, because it may not, making a game doesn't mean that you're going to get to, like you said, you're selling copies and the publisher loves and they're picking it up. It might be that, hey, we want to incorporate this into something else, or we really
sure,
like what you're doing. Like, there's so many different reasons why you can make a product and how it's going to affect something else out there. It looks like we have two questions here.
Yeah.
And this is like the first question is really important. You mentioned thousands of lines of code. You have a full-time job. How much time? And this comes up because you get the student mindset and you get the professional mindset. And I see this all the time where I stayed up all night and working on my own project, trying to work on my portfolio. 2 years, they out of the graduation, they got the job. Man, I don't even look at my computer when I come home.
Yep.
How much time are you spending outside of your full-time job doing this?
Y- yeah. Uh, um, there's a point to that. I think every once in a while I kind of feel like that. I'm just like, no, I just want to walk away. I just want to sit here and stare at the wall. Um, but no, it's I it kind of works. My wife and I have different schedules, so she works really early morning, so I try to get up around the same time she does. And when she starts working, I'll put in a few hours before work, and then when I get off work, we'll eat dinner together, and then she goes to bed early since she's up, and I'm usually up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning working. And there is a point where I love creating, and I think you have to. I do have a full-time job, which is nice, so I can say, okay, that's paying the bills.
Yeah.
This is as much as I love that job and I love the company and I love it. It's like it doesn't fulfill that creative
Yes.
itch. And I think this I get to make something. I'm telling a story through the mom. I'm creating. I've had people feel like they feel things toward mom. So to me, that's rewarding. But yeah, it's definitely. I probably spend, oh shoot, like at 8 to 10 hours at night. I don't sleep much. I sleep about 3 hours a night,
Oh,
which
wow.
helps give me time to work on it. So
And that's not for everybody, and it's not, and it's also not the the biggest uh the model, like, hey, you must reach
right,
that, but it
no,
is it is important to say, uh if you want things to get done for your project, you gotta manage that time, even though
right,
you have a full-time job. One thing I do like about this question is that students want to wrap up so much, and
mhm,
oftentimes I don't want to just say students, but we want to wrap up so much and get it. Like, I gotta be the person that made the game while I was in school, that made the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. That kind of feeling is like, it's okay that you got the job, it pays the bills, and you learn things out of that because you're very well connected to the industry and with
Right.
professionals who have done this before. and you can start to ask questions, and then little by little just chip away at this project, and look where you've gotten it to. I mean, this is a lot more than a lot of people can ask. And I think it's a testament to that, being patient and going along with that, because obviously there's been a lot of roadblocks and obstacles that you've had to get through.
Certainly. I mean, it's every new thing that's come up has been a something else to learn, or something I didn't expect, or when I had to do all the graphics or sound effect. Like each of those little things are, you can always give up. The second half of that question about time management, and also, yeah, I'm crazy and don't sleep, but the important thing is that you maintain a schedule for yourself. It's going to take
Yeah.
time. It's
Yeah.
You keep plugging away. I have I use like OneNote. I love using, which I have all my I have all sorts of notes and documents, and I'm saying, okay, I'm working on this, and I keep track of my progress, because that's a big thing. Is sometimes you don't even have time to finish the one thing you're working on, and if you're spending a lot of time, where was I, what was I doing, you can waste a lot of time. So that's keeping organized, time, and just management of everything, your resources, your notes, your everything, really helps. You can just jump in there. So I was right here, pick up and keep
Yes.
going.
Yeah, that doesn't get talked about enough, and that does need to happen. We have a second question, John, assuming it's coming from our social. Uh,
Yes.
you talked about Unity and After Effects. Which one is giving you the most trouble? What is the most difficult to use in your pipeline?
After Effects, I've been using professionally for years. I started with Vegas Video back in the late
Oh wow!
90s. Yeah, back when it was Sonic Foundry, then they sold it to Sony, and now they sold it to, I think, Magix or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started with that, and then I've been using After Effects. Well, the school teaches Nuke, or at least did when I was there. I don't know if they're
Yeah, we
still
teach both now,
teaching
Nuke
both.
and After Effects. Yeah.
Okay. And then, yeah, but it's really, I've been using it since around 2013 professionally. So for me, the After Effects part just comes super naturally. My fingers naturally fly over the hotkeys. And Unity is the one that I was new to. I've done some programming again back in the 90s. I started with like Delphi and Pascal programming, but I've also done C plus, some Visual plus, and then getting into this where you kind of mentioned node-based programming. It starts with a bit of that, and you're still doing all the coding, but like there are a lot of ways that you can. There are little shortcuts, and you don't have to brute force everything anymore. So I feel Unity was easier for me to learn, but that also might be because I'm doing it, you know, 12 years later when YouTube is, very, very filled with videos.
Yeah, yeah, it's this is an amazing renaissance of, especially, you look at 2020 where companies were shutting down and a lot of people were working remotely, including Los Angeles Film School, and there was a lot of growth. I mean, I was learning Blender, Cinema 4D, and it was nice to sit down and go, man, this is available to us, and take full
Yeah.
advantage of that. Do we
Blender
have
is
more
getting
questions
huge
from
right now. Yeah.
John? And okay, good. um, Resources, networking groups, coding books. Um, this question that they're looking for, something that we might not necessarily learn in school.
Absolutely. I don't have any book recommendations offhand. Like honestly, Unity, their website has great resources. I'm kind of if I want to do something, I'll just start. One of my biggest issues when trying to watch the videos is they expected you to have kind of a baseline
Yes.
understanding. They
Yeah.
start to be like, so click on the this. I'm like, what's that? So I did spend the first few weeks in the intro section of the Unity website and just kind of pour over that. They have a couple of demo projects that come with it that you can open up, and you can look at their code and follow along. That's a great way to get started, is find a demo project and just look at what they did, because it's a lot easier to, that goes to here, which goes to, and then you can start playing with numbers and variables and see how that impacts things without having to build it from the ground up. Other than that, there's Reddit and YouTube, and like there are so many resources for developers. Twitter, if you there are so many communities. The one thing, the hardest thing is these aren't communities for here's my game, everyone play it. It's more
Right.
of how do we program, and those communities are fairly easy to find. It's more of the finding people to play it. That's what
The
everyone wants.
Q&A. Yeah,
Oh,
there's
and that question just popped up. So
yeah, how about promoting and marketing this game now that you made it? How to get the word out? Um, it's such a really good important thing. I went back and got my master's degree in marketing because I knew as an artist, there's nobody telling us like this is how you do it.
yeah,
Fortunately, social media allows us to do that, but again, it goes into everything else. When you want to sit down and learn something, well, YouTube is great. Probably that and Google are first things to go to, but you're getting, hundreds of thousands of hits in a split second. Where do you start, right? So for you, when you're promoting and marketing, we know this again. Animation Studio Manager is on Steam. You can
Steam.
check it out right now. How are you starting to market and promote this?
So what you said, there's two ways. You try to look something up. There's hundreds of views. That goes for trying to get advice, but also trying to, if you put a new game out there, there's hundreds of new games
Yeah,
every day.
every day.
It's and so it's definitely difficult. One of the best from all the research I've done in my own, when I started, it seems like giving away copies to streamers to play seems to be one of the best
Yes,
things.
it's awesome.
These streamers, a lot of them, I mean, some of them, if they're big, they have no interest in me. But the smaller ones, they need content. So if you give them a free game, it's something to play. On the other hand, if they're small, they might only have 20 viewers. But if I've noticed there's certain things, people are looking up the videos. So if someone's interested in buying it and they see a video, or if they watch it, there's always that chance. I found one of the least effective things is trying to do ads, like Twitter and Facebook. There's so many of that. Unless you're willing to spend thousands of dollars, that doesn't seem to work. Really, I did a little bit when it first came out. I kind of mentioned how when I came out with the bare bones, that didn't go so well. So I've been holding off until now. And honestly, what my plan is over the next few weeks is there's 17 characters. I've made a little animated GIF of each character, and it'll like have their name and their position. And I'm going to be trying to post those, putting the finding hashtags at work, finding the best time of day to tweet. Um, and it seems like, if it's just, hey guys, I made a game, people don't engage with that much and it dies very quickly. But if it's
Hmm.
a character or something fun and cute, people are more interested in, oh, you made this cute gif, I like that regardless of the game. So it's with this saturated flood of things, you're trying to stay in people's minds without annoying your friends who are like, I know you've been working on this game for over a year, stop telling me. But I also know for myself personally, even if I see an ad for something I like, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times seeing it before I even go buy it. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to use, honestly, you probably with that degree have more. I've tried to pick my mom's brain as a marketer, but that, she was into marketing, 20 years ago. So the landscape has changed radically.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's intriguing to me. Like my thing is to really find out why a particular demographic. I have students that were completely born in 21st century. Why did they make the decisions of purchasing the things that they do versus, what I like I whatever I'm interested in, I'll put it in the cart and I'll think about it for,
right,
72 hours and then, and I can see the smart marketing on the company. Maybe it's like adidas.com and they're going, are you still interested in this thing, so I can see what they're trying to do with a person like me. and i
right.
and i follow that and go like, how can I do that my artwork? How can I promote and not be in your face and like you must like it? Why didn't you like it? I will unfriend
Right.
you if you didn't. But and it could go back to the Brian De Palma thing. Maybe you're making something that affects people. Like, you know, we're all interested in this now. This is something that I have, or you strike a specific demographic that's in another part of, you know, the world that's not the United States, and they're like,
Right.
"Oh, we really like this because this is something that you never know." And I think that's the fun part of the journey. I stopped trying to romance how the thing is supposed to go and start allowing the thing to happen, and then
Absolutely.
respond to that next thing and going, okay, this is where you're at, you know.
Well, I,
um
I love a quote I love is that luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
yeah,
And I love that. It's you need to be ready, but you don't know what's gonna happen. You I can do everything I can and just go with the wave. And honestly, like you said, I don't want to be annoying, but if I'm putting out characters, if you think they're cute and you're
yeah,
sharing them and you're liking it, then that can get it's really about finding what people want to see. What is it about this that people are gonna attach to and try to demonstrate that. It's hard when I want to be like, cool, I did an update. Now I want to start working on the next update, but I need to be like, no, I actually need to stop and create some marketing material. I need to create some
yeah,
screenshots and type up, and that is an important part because no one knows about this until you do an event, until you promote it, and that's definitely a huge important part that hopefully I'm going to be starting, and hopefully I can in a couple weeks be like, oh, what I did was perfect.
yeah.
I'm not anticipating that, but we'll see.
As we're starting to get to the end of this, I don't know if I see any more questions. John and the team out there, Dave, is Dave's social? Because I can't see it from here. Is his like, where can we find you, David?
Yes, I am on Twitter, YouTube. Those are the ones I use most.
Okay,
Let's see, my Twitter would be David E Creations. I think. Let
David.
me let me let me look this. David. Yeah, they have a limit on how many characters, and then the YouTube is David Estes Creations.
Okay. So I'm sure that you guys are dropping that in there. Thank you if you are. I'm looking it up right now too, and getting connected, which we're going to do that. All right, great. And they're going to be in the description as well. David, I want to thank you for, you know, sharing this opportunity, especially, you know, going back to the last thing you said was when I started doing this and the people I met, it's different when you're meeting a student and you don't realize like this person could be this thing in the future, you know. And I think that's the impact of like being an educator, going, all right, um, the things we say now can greatly affect this person, you know, over a period of time. And it's
Certainly.
great to have you come back and talk to us and see this. It's such a great accomplishment. I don't think and I learned so much from what you were talking about, because I ran into a lot of the pitfalls of why I didn't want to make my game, why I didn't want to finish my animation, why I didn't want to finish my film. And you've given me more to go, you know, to talk to other students about, but even my own projects. Like, you just stay with building, finishing off that you know, that next part, that next chunk.
Right.
And really important, staying prepared, because I could run, if I'm making a game and my program is struggling, I could be running into a programmer at a coffee shop or wherever and going
Right.
like, now I'm ready to show them this level one and going, instead of the number. You know, number one thing I tell students about portfolios is like, let me see your portfolio. Oh, you can go here, but yeah, that's old stuff, it's not ready, I got some new stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And they're not, you know, they're sort of in the same mindset. I was going to do it this weekend, you know, next weekend and next weekend. Um, and then, is there anything you want to put out there to our audience before we go ahead and sign off?
You mentioned the film school, and I think something you said is so important because people I met 12, 13 years ago, as for me, that was, I'm just getting out of the army. I'm coming into Los Angeles. I have no idea what I'm doing, what I'm navigating, and in a lot of ways, the even from the initial recruiters at the school who they're just seeing a lot of people, but like even from the moment I first started talking to people, there was a great energy, and I think that's huge. Of we There are going to be struggles. There are going to be um, you know there are going to be days you're working on a project for months and it's lost joy. It's lost its it
Yeah.
doesn't have that sparkle. It's now just something I'm doing because but at the end of the day, it's something like I think if you set those reasonable expectations and say, this is for me, I want to create, I'm going to try to attach myself to that feeling. And even if it's not 10,000 people, even if this doesn't sell so much I can quit my job and start a studio and hire 5 people, like that doesn't mean it failed. If I'm able to create that, learn something, and just put it out there, I think that succeed. Obviously, we all hope for a financial return, especially
Yeah.
as you have to pay for things. But honestly, when you come into this industry, you're going to find the job, but the passion, that's something that comes from you. I think it's really easy for people to get jaded or bitter or disillusioned with things, and that's sad because I think you can have a lot of fun and passion in a creative field that really tries to bog you down, and that's really what the game's about. Trying to keep that fun and not sell your soul and become corrupt and all that stuff.
And there you have it. I think thank you for saying that. I think you put sort of the motivation, and it's wrapped around the game. That's what the game is about, staying motivated through. David, thank you for being with us, and to our audience out there, thank you guys. The description of where you can find David on social and where you can find the game, please check it out. It's a lot of hard work put into this. I love the characters. I love everything that's going on with this. And thank you, David. Thank you, John. And thank you, LAFF team, for helping us put this together. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Thank you.